What would you say is the number one complaint?
Number one complaint would be I'm feeling so much more bloated the older I get. And I think that is just an indication of the number of people that are getting digestion issues, because that bloating could be related to so many different things.
These moments where you go to Mount Kailash, Rishikesh, how has that shaped you as a person?
I would say it's shaped and translates in some way into everything I do. Every element is a part of the bigger picture and the journey.
For you personally, what's like a transformation that you've gone through over the years that has been significant?
The biggest change in my life probably came when I started getting divorced.
What makes you feel so connected to your religion, to spirituality?
It's a journey and a process in terms of one door opens the next. And while the seed was sown in my childhood, very early days, also practices and cultural practices at home and traditions and things that I grew up doing, praying. And that, even though it seems very rooted in culture, it sows the seed of so much more in the future.
On today's episode of Desi Wisdom with Kavita Jhaveri, I'm joined by Mira Manek, a practitioner of Ayurvedic rituals and author of 3 best-selling books. We start the episode by talking about how spiritual she is and her connection to her guru Morari Bapu. We then move the conversation to how she healed her digestive issues through Ayurvedic principles that are centuries old. You'll want to stay on with us till the end because Mira shares a very simple 10-second oil ritual that can up your energy levels and support digestion, even reverse digestive issues. Welcome, Mira. I am so excited to have you today. Actually, as a part of this Desi Wisdom podcast, you are our first expert around Ayurvedic wellness. And so I'm really excited to dive into those topics with you. So the first question I have for you might feel like, I don't know if you get asked this a lot, but I was actually quite curious as I was going through your feed and reading your book, the Book of Chai. And, you're very spiritual is what I got from your book as well as from your feed. And I find that so many desis this day and age aren't as connected to their religion or spirituality in the same ways that their parents were, like that devotion that our parents have had. But I see you feel really connected. And so I was curious about what makes you feel so connected to your religion, to spirituality. I know you follow Morari Bapu. So yeah.
Oh, well, that's good research you've done there. Yes, I do feel connected. And thank you for having me on the podcast, firstly. Great to meet you. I do feel very connected to India. And I think it's a journey and a process in terms of, one door opens the next. And while the seed was sown in my childhood, very early days, it's only later in life that it sort of opened up into this whole real network of spirituality, I guess, from going to India, which is the gateway, I guess, for me, to also practices and cultural practices at home and traditions and things that I grew up doing, praying. And that, even though it seems very rooted in culture, it sows the seed of so much more in the future. And so I wouldn't say it's any one thing. My parents sent me to a school that was British, English, the teachers were English, but we learned Sanskrit. So while I wouldn't say that necessarily is the only thing, I think the package of growing up in a very traditional Gujarati Indian family, growing up with my grandparents, speaking Gujarati at home, learning Sanskrit in my school, and then going to kathas from the age of, say, 12, listening to Morari Bapu, and also just traveling India and finding whatever I could relate to and what sort of spoke to me, channeled and opened up that spirituality, I guess, in a way. And whether it's religion or spirituality or prayer or just connection to the divine, and it's probably all those things in one, actually. And that grows and that changes and that transforms, but essentially the seed was sown at a very young age.
Yeah, who do you feel? Because I feel like for myself, I'm Jain, but I'm so connected to, being Jain, being Gujarati, being Indian. And I remember just being younger and going to temple, and it felt like at peace there. There's this distinct feeling that I would have when I would go there, where I don't think everybody feels that way necessarily. It literally rooted into me just wanting more of it, wanting to be around more of it. So, because I feel like there's a lot of influences in this, right? So, who would you say is like a big influence in how spiritually connected you feel?
I think who and what, I think growing up speaking Gujarati and learning Sanskrit at school is the sort of what, that's the sort of thing that sowed the seed, as it were. And growing up listening to tales of the Ramayana and the Mahabharata and the Gita and all of that from my grandparents and from just growing up and watching the series. And then obviously being exposed to Morari Bapu from a young age and listening to Gatha, and something in that spoke to me so much so that I still listen to the Gatha today and still travel the world to listen. And that, I think I would attribute it in most part to that, because that sort of accentuated, accelerated, increased whatever practices that I have, and also deepened my knowledge and deepened my own sense of, it's not always knowledge, it's also that feeling that you said. And it's a feeling of feeling at home or feeling at peace, of surrendering, of just knowing that you're meant to be here. And that's the feeling that I get when I go to Gatha. So that's what I would attribute it to mostly. But I do think that wouldn't have happened had I not been exposed to it. That would have been, the deepening of spirituality, of understanding our scriptures wouldn't have happened if I hadn't studied Sanskrit in school. Or, there's so many different things at play here. And the exposure that my family gave me, and I think it all plays a role. And for someone else, it might be completely different. It might just be the cultural or the sort of going to India element. I've traveled so much in India through the years since a young age, and every journey and every single trip there has taught me something different and been spiritual in its own way.
Yeah, I think that that's so important. Even I have a son, he's 7. And, one of the things that I really feel like is so important for him is to be around our culture, to be going to India when he's like steeped in it, and having experiences that sort of shape him. Because to me, I really believe that spirituality at such a young age for a child, it just goes such a long way. The sense of connection to their own selves, their soul, like the universe. So yeah, that's why I was curious about your journey. And when you're with Bapu, like, what is that experience like for you?
I would say it's changed over the years and it's different every time. But I think now, more so than ever before, I really feel like what he says in Katha goes into me a lot more. I absorb it, I understand it, I awake to it. And I'm not saying I wasn't before, and I listened to Katha many, many times, but I just listen to it and absorb it in a very different way now. And I've done it for obviously since I was 12 years old, and there were probably Kathas that went over my head sometimes, but there was still something that kept me connected. So I would say it's a real journey of change and transformation, listening to Bapu over the years. And it's a sense of connection, and I'm sure there's some sort of connection that goes back as well, because what was it that drew me to that? It has to be something. But I also feel a sense of community as well, which is wonderful. I know so many people who come to Ram Katha, and there's always somebody I know when I go to these Kathas. And I think each and every one of them is a whole new experience in itself, whichever part of the world I'm going to listen, whichever part of India, each and every one is so different and such a new experience, and it opens up a whole other part of India or other part of the world for me.
Yeah, because you've done like your journey, like I call them, well, they're pilgrimages, but you've gone to like Mount Kailash, which is like such a holy spot, which is not easy to do. And for so many religions, including Jainism, and Hinduism, obviously Shiva. But how these moments where you go to Mount Kailash, Rishikesh, I think you've done more than just that, Varanasi, how has that shaped you as a person, into like what you do on the daily basis, how you run your business, how these books, you've written 3 books, right? How the books came about. Do you feel like those are part of all of that?
I would say it's shaped and translates in some way into everything I do, because everything I do is influenced. It's an element of India in it. Whether it's the chai spices, the Ayurveda, my exposure to India also involved a lot of going to Ayurvedic resorts when I was growing up. So I would be going to Gatha and my dad would say, why don't you go to this Ayurvedic resort? So I started thinking of Ayurveda as a destination as opposed to as a way of life. And it's only later that I came to realize how I pieced it all together. So that's what I say when I say, every element is a part of the bigger picture and the journey, because I didn't realize I was ever going to write a book on Ayurveda or understand that it's more of a way of life, and as opposed to something that I just went to do and did a detox and went to pick myself into this resort and just feel better and do lots of massages and eat really well. But what I realize is it's more about how you translate that into your day-to-day life. And yes, the gatha, the spirituality, all weaves into that, because Ayurveda itself is a spiritual. Your rituals, your daily rituals, involve an element of spirituality. They're done with meaning and done with purpose. They are spiritual in themselves. No matter what you do, running can be your meditation, or whatever you do can be your meditation, because it's about how you connect with yourself, or how it allows you to just drop away all thoughts and become very present in what you do. And the more present you become with any practice that you do, and the more it feels like a purposeful practice and habit, the more ritualistic and sadhana-like it becomes. Sadhana is your daily prayer practice, and so it can become your daily sadhana. And so my books are an extension, or have been influenced by, all the spiritual things that I've done, and they involve them as well. So in Prajna, for example, which is all about Ayurveda, I go into a lot of my own personal rituals and what has helped me, lifted me out of all the sort of harder moments in life. My first book, Saffron Soul, I go into, obviously there's lots of recipes, but there are also stories woven into those recipes, like what did my grandfather, how does my grandfather wake up and the first tonic, winter tonic he has to drink, or the juice that he has, or, what I've learned from the way he's lived in a very Ayurvedic way, or the thalis, and what does the thali represent. And the third book is obviously the book of chai, but even in that, chai was merely the excuse to tell all these wonderful stories and my travel journeys around India, as well as the stories of my grandmother growing up in India and her own stories that she told me of growing up in this village, and her nanny bringing her up, and how her own parents were actually in Africa while she was in India. And all these amazing stories that I just think I want to tell them, but chai became the vehicle to tell them.
Yeah. And you're alluding, I totally get that. And I feel such a deep, like you have such a deep connection to your grandparents. Is this on your mom's side and dad's side?
So we were close to my mum's parents, but my grandfather on my mum's side did pass away early on. But I grew up living with my dad's parents. So yes, and my only living grandparent now is my grandmother on my dad's side. So yeah, I'm very, very close to her. She's probably my closest, and then came everyone else. But yeah, she's still here, and I am very close to her. And I think every single book that I've written has such an element of India. People always say they feel like they're going on a journey to India, like India's awoken in some way, or like, they feel transported to India in some way, especially in that third book, which is about chai. It sort of the stories take you to India. And the stories actually came first in that book. And obviously the history is important, the recipes are important, but essentially the stories make up a real chunk of the book. And to me, they're like the most important thing.
Yeah. I could feel when I was reading them, just this like depth of connection with your grandmother and your family and India. But yeah, it's really beautiful.
Thank you.
You alluded to sort of like transformation. I know this is like hard to put into sometimes words or pinpoint one thing, but for you personally, what's like a transformation that you've gone through over the years that has been significant for yourself?
The biggest change in my life probably came when I started getting divorced. I say start because it kind of lasted quite a long time, and moved back to London, which is where I grew up. And that probably caused the most impact in my life in terms of identity change. That's when I started writing my books and started my whole journey in food and wellness, and started finding myself again. So even though I had the building blocks from before, whether it's Ayurveda or eating well, and all of that, it all started happening and all came into play when I moved back to London after I started getting divorced. And that's, even though I was, I'd hit rock bottom, I felt like I'd lost my identity, all of that. And it took years to sort of rebuild, but in a very different way, almost build from scratch, I would say, because everything I do now, I wasn't doing before. So it was almost like that was my rebirth, as it were, or the birth of my identity. And while the journey looking backwards in retrospect has been, you can see how the Lego has, you can put it together, you can put the puzzle together, and it makes sense. It does feel like a very slow journey. But you also understand, I also understand why it's been a slow journey, because changes don't happen overnight. They happen consistently and over time. And as with my own transformation that's happened over that decade since I moved back to London, my books, my brand, all of that feels like a real part of that transformation, almost like giving birth to something new each time. And they feel a part of that journey as much as my own emotional change or my own identity change or whatever you call it. And I think even though I call it a transformation, I do think it's more a sense of finding yourself again, or finding the real you, finding the version of you that you were meant to be all along, or that was there from childhood but sort of got lost along the way.
Yeah, what identity do you feel like you let go of that died with the divorce?
I think I always felt like I was somebody's somebody. I was never sort of my own identity. And so actually coming into my own and starting to build that from scratch, who is Mira, even for my own self and my own self-worth, was quite a big deal. So it wasn't so much letting go, it was more about reclaiming me and myself and realizing my own identity, capacity, strength, and ability. And even though we all know we're capable of things, it's not until life throws us something that we actually can delve deep enough to step up to that challenge and realize what we're actually made of.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, see if I'm translating it all right, but like sort of hitting that rock bottom, makes you really look at everything, like it makes you look at everything, right? In a new way where you're just like, okay, a tendency that I have, this is what came up for me as you were talking, and I'm super intuitive in this process of even being, asking questions. But, I have this like, and I think a lot of women have this, where there's an energy that goes outwards, right? There's an energy that moves out. And what I mean by that is I'm concerned about my son, my parents, my husband. There's like, just like a lot of energy that gets invested in, like so much of that energy is moving outside of us that we can so easily lose ourselves in that, because we care so much about community, those around us, and taking care of, right? That we can lose parts of ourselves in that process. Is that, I mean, I'm sort of saying it in completely different words than you are, but is that sort of what you're describing?
Yeah, so I think I do feel like I lost a sense of myself in doing all these different things, and in becoming a wife, in becoming, traveling around the world. And I did lose an essence of myself. But I also think that I might have actually lost that earlier than I realized. And so going back to it, it was recognizing the old self of mine that I'd let go of way, way before.
You were saying that you may have lost that, like that part of you wasn't lost just by the marriage, that you've realized that it had been gone for a while, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think you can.
Yeah. When do you, I mean, I know it's hard to trace back everything, but when do you think that part of you sort of left?
Gosh, that's an interesting question. I would say that part of me left around the age of 16, because that's when I changed school and I went from being in a very, very small school where I knew everyone, it was all very like homely and small, to a very large school which I just got admission into, and I thought, my parents thought it was best I go there. And it wasn't just that, it was number one, going to this big school where I knew nobody and I felt like a nobody, and I went from a school where I was quite, quite clever, getting good results, to somewhere where I became very average because it was a very excellent school. And at the same time, my body started going through changes. I'd never worried about how I looked. I never cared because I just didn't really have any issues. And suddenly I started putting on crazy amounts of weight. I started getting acne, and it all happened at the same time. So I went to this new school, which was, much larger than my large school, my previous school, sorry. And very different to what I knew from the age of 4 to the age of 16. I didn't know anyone there. I started getting acne pretty much overnight. and I put on a lot of weight. So all those things made me feel very, very, not necessarily just unpopular, but almost invisible. And I didn't actually want to be visible because I felt so terrible when I looked in the mirror. I felt like awful. I don't want to use the word ugly, but I just had, my face had swollen up because it was bigger. I'd put on weight. I had all these spots and I just felt awful. And I knew nothing about nutrition. I knew nothing about anything. But in my previous school, I was fed really well. It was all organic food. They really took care of what they fed us. And at home, it was all very, very good food. But we went to this new school where it was all like, school lunches, which were yummy, delicious, but actually really bad for you. And I had no idea that what I was putting in my mouth had an impact on my belly or my, I had no clue, because from the age of 4 to 16, I was given the most wholesome, delicious, amazing food and nourished really well. And I hadn't put on any weight because I didn't have that issue. And suddenly at 16, we're fed all this or given all this like junk food. I have no idea what impact it has on me, and I start eating it. So it was just a whole medley of things. And I think that's the point at which everything changed for me. I became aware of my body. I became aware of my beauty. I became aware of the people around me and started comparing myself to the girls around me. I became aware of the fact that I was one of many intelligent girls and not just, I can ace my GCSEs and A-levels, And I became aware of a lot of things that made me feel very unconfident. It was like I lost something at that point. And that, I think, I would pin down to losing a sense of identity, a sense of my old self, a sense of my, carefree, couldn't care less. I'm happy to be with friends, without friends. I'm happy to do whatever, and I'm comfortable in my own space. To becoming aware of all these things and becoming totally uncomfortable in my surroundings. And I think that lasted for a very long time, that awareness and that sense of, am I being watched? Am I being judged? Am I cool enough? Am I not cool enough? All of that stuff lasted for so long. And I do think that that's what I've reclaimed now. So yes, I lost something in my marriage. Yes, I lost something. But I think it all started very early on.
Yeah, I mean, I've been a love and relationship coach for 15 years, and I've always said, like, it's never about that last relationship. It's never about the divorce. So many of these things were already cultivated long before that, and what you're describing is just like, yeah, you wanted to be invisible, right? So to be invisible, like you just have to then not have a presence, right? Of some sort. And so it becomes about everybody else.
Yeah, and also you start aspiring to people around you, start thinking they're better than you. And I don't think that voice just goes away like that.
Yeah. I think this is so relatable because, I know you know this, but you're definitely not the only one, but like, it's so relatable because it's like that identity that got sort of ingrained at that time, like keeps going in life, but it also shapes, like, it really sounds like it's shaped why you do what you do now. Would you agree with that?
Yes, 100%. And I think what I do now has helped me reclaim that sense of self as well. So it's both feeding into the other.
Yeah. Can you say more about that?
Well, what I do now, i.e. the work in wellness and the book on Ayurveda and chai and writing, all of that has fed my soul and fed my sense of self-worth from the perspective of rising up to each challenge, becoming a part of a community, whether it's in the UK or globally, which, where there does feel like there's a sense of community around this sphere of health and wellness. And I feel like I'm a real part of it. And it gives me a sense of belonging, purpose, which is something that I think I've always craved. And that translates into all areas of life, right? Because we all have a sense of community in whichever field we're in, whether it's the family community and the friends community or different communities that we're part of. And so I think that sense of self and the sense of confidence and the sense of what I have learnt from everything that I do has translated into all areas of life.
Yeah, I get why you keep using the word reclaim. It's almost like there's a way that you're like, no, this is like who I've always really been. This is who I've really always been. And then it's taking these different forms. in your work and in your life, it sounds like.
Yes, I think whether it's the books or the chai or all that I do now has allowed me just to focus on me. And in a way, I have got busy in life a little bit. And that's, once you focus on yourself and you have things going on yourself, things naturally fall away. So it's not about necessarily trying to let go of things. It's also about filling your own cup and focusing on yourself and focusing on what you do, so much so that the things that used to matter don't matter anymore because they just naturally fall away. That applies to food, that applies to everything, whether it's, starting to eat the right foods, starting to eat the foods that nourish you, and hopefully over time, the things that you used to crave will naturally fall away. It's not about I can't eat this anymore. It's about, what can I replace it with? What can I have that will nourish me and make me feel good? And it's a virtuous cycle. So focusing on myself and focusing on everything that I do and trying to just, not in a selfish way, but in a selfish way in a way, just self-rituals or practices of that make you focus on your own self, whether it's the body practice, sleep, but, putting yourself first, exercise, and obviously your own work. All of that comes first. And putting myself first has allowed me to shut out a lot of the noise that used to be there.
Yeah. Yeah. I think sometimes when I hear like I disagree with this, but when I hear like putting ourselves first and, like sometimes it feels very Western in the way that we talk about it, because there's a way that the connotation that it gives is that if you don't put yourself first, then like you won't be any good for anybody else, right? And so there's definitely some truth to that, but I also don't know if I agree with that totally. Like I think there are also ways that you can be fed by the collective. And I think where I'm going with this is when you say the rituals, right? When you say the rituals, what I feel in that makes it very, for lack of another way of saying it, Eastern, is that we are honoring our bodies. We're honoring this vessel that our soul resides in. We're honoring, our mind in which all of this is all happening. There's like an honoring of this, and as you honor this, yes, you can give more. Yes, you can be there in a way for yourself and others that you couldn't before. But sometimes I get a little bit like, because we use this like focusing on yourself thing so much and it feels so Western to me. Sometimes I'm like, can we say it differently?
I agree with all of that, but I also think it's a time of life. So I think if I right now had so many extra duties and I had a child and I had, people to take care of in my life, I think it'd be a very different thing. But luckily right now, at the moment, I don't. And that will likely change at some point in the future. But right now I can focus on me. And so rather than, what I mean by focusing on me and all of that is not saying yes to every social thing. There's a lot going on in life and London can get busy and distances, I realized in the last 3 years that going to places and doing things and being present everywhere, trying to be present, really made me tired. And so I'm a bit more careful and picky and choosy about what I do now, as opposed to, oh gosh, I've said yes and I can't say no now, or I'll make that work, So that's what I mean. The duties that are most important to me, whether it's family things or events or, family birthdays or my grandmother, all those things, they come first. I wouldn't ever ignore those, but it's more about the social element, which and even when it comes to the social element of work, work comes before that. But of course, the social element is important, the networking is important, but I just don't ever want to deplete my energy, which I think I was getting to a couple of years ago. And so putting myself first in that sense and realizing that actually, well, what's the priority here? My work, what am I trying to do this year? What am I trying to do right now? I'm trying to build my business. I'm trying to focus on me. I want to become the best version of myself. And that doesn't just happen overnight. You can see yourself improving year by year. You can see yourself improving month by month. You can see yourself in one winter and the next winter and be like, oh, gosh, I feel like a different person this winter. Like last winter, I remember being really like not happy. And look at me this winter. Even though I find winters hard, it's like year-on-year progression. So what I mean by that is, and I don't like to use the word too much about working on myself, I just mean spending a bit more time alone and not always being social or having to meet people all the time, doing whatever I need to do the best I can.
I hope you love this episode of Desi Wisdom. Please leave a comment below telling me if you liked it, if you didn't like it, what you would have wanted more of. It really helps me refine this podcast to give you exactly what you want. I will be reading every comment and responding. Yeah, I totally get that. Sometimes we just feel pulled to do things because, I don't know, sometimes it feels like you're cool or like you got the invite that you wanted to get.
I think everyone still gets that sense of, oh my God, I didn't get invited there, even though I didn't want to go there.
Exactly.
Why didn't they invite me?
Exactly. Then you even go some of these social things and it feels empty, right? Like you go, you show up and you meet people, but sometimes it can also feel very empty, and not all of it. But they can feel empty. I don't know if you experience that.
Of course, 100%. And I think you experience that everywhere. Well, not everywhere, but a lot of places that you go to. But I would say that it's quite nice to have now built this sort of community where, even though I won't know lots of people at the events that I go to, there is a handful of people who've now become my friends. So it's always nice to reconnect with them, even though I don't see them all the time, because they're sort of the newer friends that I have. And equally, turning up to things, dressing up and all of that, I don't always stay very long. That's the other thing. I don't like depleting my energy and feeling like, oh, the next day I need to sleep in and all of that. I just, do my thing, socialize, say hi to everyone and sort of just leave, because I feel like my energy in terms of like not feeling too tired afterwards and all of that is more important, or feeling like, oh God, I overate that. That's the worst feeling. I just can't deal with that feeling. So then I try not to do all of that, and I just sort of do my thing and leave, which is so nice because, then you can get the invite and feel okay about it. But yeah, I do get that, because if you do feel like you go to these events and you kind of do a lot of the time you've got to take the photo, and people just want to do it to post photos, which is really sad. But that's the world. That's what the world has got to now, right? Like, you go to these events and someone will say, "Oh my God, that event looked so fun," and you're like, "Yeah, it was nice." But
exactly.
Oh, did I make it look that fun?
It's so true.
You're living the life, and I'm like, yeah, I guess so. I'm going to a few events here and there. I'm not sure if that's living the life. But it's I'm grateful to have a sense of community and have people in this world who are in my field who are doing such amazing things. I feel quite inspired by them.
Yeah, 100%. I think like when I feel connected to people, when I create connection, sometimes it's not just going to happen, the connection piece, like you also have to cultivate that in your own way to feel it. But when there's connection, I feel like it's always fulfilling on some level, right? But sometimes that doesn't naturally exist in many of these situations. So
I agree. Yeah.
But okay, I'm gonna sort of switch up the topic a little bit because I want to get your sense of this from an Ayurvedic perspective, okay? Because digestion issues is a big thing, and I'm just gonna rattle off some data for a second. So 40% of adults worldwide have at least one digestive disorder. That's actually huge. Roughly 60 to 70 million people in the US struggle from some sort of digestive issue. So I know that you've also struggled with digestion issues, right? So what do you see in this realm that's happening? And what would you say are some of the remedies from an Ayurvedic perspective?
I think that digestion is the root cause of so many diseases. Like they say, almost all diseases are caused by some sort of issue in digestion. And digestion issues are caused by some sort of stress. Some sort of stress on the mind, the body. So essentially, it boils down to stresses in life. And also how you eat, of course. But even how you eat is, shaped by your stresses as well. So being happy and finding sense of peace is probably the most important part of the equation. That's something that people do speak about, but when you have a digestion issue, that's not the first thing you think. You think, oh my God, what can I take to make this better? Or how am I going to get rid of this bloating? over the short term, yes, you can get rid of that bloating by taking something. But in the long term, what can you do? It's obviously changing patterns, changing how you eat, changing maybe when you eat. And I think Ayurvedically, looking at the principles, let's not look at necessarily what dosha type am I, but let's look at the principles. These days, I think it's about, firstly, cutting out processed foods. Having too many meals out and having too many processed foods, it's probably causing more issues than any other dosha-related or any other intolerance-related issue. So I think looking at the freshness of the food that you eat first and foremost, and then looking at the principles of Ayurveda, which are actually very simple. It's about going back to basics. Number one, how often are you eating? Are you eating 3 meals a day? Are you eating 10 meals a day? And Ayurvedically, you should be having, ideally, breaks between meals, which means you should be having about 3 meals with a couple of snacks here and there, not overdoing the frequency of those foods, because that dilutes the digestive fire, which is your Agni, which needs to be strong when you're digesting food. So that's number one. Then how long a gap are you leaving between your last meal and your sleep time, and then when you wake up? So not necessarily the exact hours of intermittent fasting, but something close to that, whether you're leaving a good 10 to 12 hour gap. And that naturally happens with most people if you're eating normally and living normally. But we've gone away from that now because we've inserted so many snacks into our life, and our social lives are dictating how we eat as well. And because our social lives dictate how we eat, we sort of eat very erratically sometimes. So it's about trying to go back to, say, how our grandparents lived or how we were brought up. Did we eat regularly, and can we go back to regular eating? Can we go back to cooked foods and whole foods rather than processed foods? And can we eliminate or reduce those snacks? And I would say those are the basics. And then obviously more than that in terms of, are you going to the bathroom every day? Because that's very important. Some people don't actually realize that not going to the bathroom in the morning is actually not normal. You have to eliminate, and eliminating toxins is, if not more important, just as important as what you're putting in. And so how much are you absorbing those nutrients? Are you getting bloating or stomach issues from the kind of foods you're eating, the stress that you're going through because you're not absorbing it, the lack of certain nutrients? It could be a whole load of things. So basically going back to the principles of Ayurveda, of digestion, of simple Ayurvedic clean eating, and then looking at where you went wrong, and also looking at the stresses in life. Are you eating when you're feeling that sense of, you're not even breathing properly because you're stressed about something, and you won't be able to digest your food then because your body is in a very different mode. You've got adrenaline and cortisol floating around, which allows or doesn't allow the blood to flow to the digestive tract, and therefore you're not going to be able to digest that food, and therefore bloating and all those things occur more when you're in stress mode and eating. So the principles, and so I've gone through most of the principles, but obviously there are more, like, cooked foods rather than raw foods, all those things, spices, cooking and drinking spices. There's a lot more than that, but I would say principally it's about when you eat, what you eat, how you eat, and cutting out processed foods and having more whole foods and cooked foods, and trying to eliminate that stress, because both digestion and stress go very much hand in hand.
So so I have two follow-up questions from that, actually. So if stress and I have also studied some of this myself, so I have some idea.
Yeah.
But if stress is the number one reason for our digestive issues, I feel like what is really underrated is pranayam, right? Like breathing techniques to really support ourselves.
Yeah.
Have you found in your work that just even handling that, let's just say, that so much of the digestive problems get fixed? I'm curious, because if that's the number one reason for so much of the issues, yeah,
absolutely. And I think I studied pranayama. I became a sort of with the breathwork and Kundalini teacher, and I have trained in it. So it's really, really important. And going back to it and doing it every single day, it instills. It's a real practice that will help all stresses in life and all digestion issues, because actually when you breathe properly, things in your mind change. Clarity comes, peace comes. You also ignite your digestive fire, which is really important. First thing in the morning, if you do that Kapalbhati breathing, which is the breath of fire, you're really helping your digestion wake up in the morning. And then you're balancing both sides of the brain and the feminine, the masculine, by doing the Anulom Vilom, which is the alternate nostril breathing. And then by just doing really deep breathing, you're just helping your entire system relax. And that's what I always say to people, that before you eat, if you just take 1 or 2 very deep breaths, you'll be able to come into the system that you need to be in order to be able to eat well, which is the non-stress system, which is the rest or relax mode, which is out of fight or flight. So if you're stressed about something, like you just come from it may not be stress like something crazy you're going through in life. It may just be, I've been to pick up the kids and I've had a long car journey and the traffic lights and everything, traffic and all that, just annoyed me, and then I got a call from this person and that annoyed me more. And the mini stresses that you have, they add up, and then you sit down to eat and you're still in that mode of, and if you just take 2 very, very deep breaths, even now, you can just let go of it all. And even like before you do a podcast, or if you're doing a talk, if you take those 2 or 3 deep breaths and just literally land into your body, you'll be able to tackle it with a lot more presence, calm, ease.
Yeah, I feel like it's so underrated.
So underrated. So,
right?
like those few deep breaths before anything, especially before eating. And I'm not saying that I do it every single time. And I was actually thinking today when I was eating, I was like, I can just feel like my heart rate's more because I'm just doing 100 things and I'm not stressed about anything. But what is it that's causing me to just be so like hyper right now? And I was just dealing with like this email, that email, this call, that call. And it was all just happening at the same time. And I was like, I'm hungry at the same time. So I was just like, oh my God, I need to eat something. So, and that was the complete wrong thing to do. I should have taken 2 deep breaths, sat down to eat, but I don't do this on a day. I'm not stressed on a daily basis. But this can happen now and again. But if this happens again and again, that's where the problem lies. When it becomes the 80% rather than the 20%, that's when the issue comes in. That's when you can develop issues, disease, digestion problems, breathing, whatever it can cause. I've got high anxiety, but do you think maybe you can calm that anxiety down in that moment by just taking a very deep breath into your belly, like really just trying to take it down, even though your breath doesn't go into your belly, but expanding your belly when you do it and then letting all that go, you probably calm that anxiety down. And it might still be there. I'm not saying that you can completely get rid of that, but over time you probably can. Over time you can probably use the physical to affect the psychological and rewire your brain internally.
Yeah, I think even before I start the podcast, I do Anulom Vilom because I have high anxiety. Like I run high anxiety, and it lands you right back in. And I'm so surprised at how many even desis don't know like Anulom Vilom. It's like a basic pranayama technique.
And the 3 basic ones I always allude to and refer to are the Anulom Vilom, the breath of fire, and then the deep breathing. And those are, the Ujjayi breath. Like if you can understand or learn how to do the Ujjayi breathing, that's really powerful because it's the sort of constricting of the vessels, and then you sort of sip the breath in it, and it really calms you down. It kind of changes your mindset very quickly. Like if I'm about to get angry or cry or whatever, if you just revert to that breathing, the Ujjayi breathing, it changes.
Can you do it really quickly so people know what that is?
It's like an oceanic sort of breathing, So
on the way out of the exhale, there's like a bit of a noise, right?
You can really slow it down, yeah. So by doing Ujjayi breathing, you're really slowing it down. So your breath will last a lot longer. It's like you are sipping it. So like really just goes, it's hard to explain. In yoga, you use it a lot, but it's constricting those nasal vessels and really sort of allowing it and making the oceanic sound.
Yeah.
Okay, you can probably hear it now.
Yeah, I could hear that last one. Yeah. Exactly. So just, I love how simple you just made even taking 2 deep breaths before you eat, right? And how much of a difference that could make. Like that's simple, super simple.
Yeah.
And so this idea of like eating salads, right, from an Ayurvedic perspective, what is that? Because I do know like we endorse more. I say we because it's like the Ayurveda comes from us. So, um, but we endorse cooked food. But we're in like such a salad culture. What are your thoughts on that?
We are in a such salad culture. My thoughts are, it's not about eliminating salads. It's about knowing what's in the salad. Is it cooked? Is it raw? Sometimes beetroots, uh, broccoli, all of that is raw, and that's what you don't want to do. You don't want to eat raw salads. You want to eat salads in which things have been cooked. And so I think it's fine to have a salad which has been cooked and may be cold, but it's cooked at least. But maybe not on a daily basis. And also raw stuff is completely fine as well. But again, not at night, ideally. You don't want to be having raw broccoli, raw tomatoes, raw cucumbers, raw lettuce, raw, I don't know, carrot, like all of that raw, just a lot of it. And that's the only dinner you have. That's a lot for your body to digest and process. Whereas if you have cooked foods, your body just digests it much better. Like think of a large chunk of carrot that's cooked and that's raw. Now, how much easier can you imagine that cooked carrot to be for your body to digest? Same with the beetroot, same with the broccoli. So it's about just being aware of what it is you're eating. It's not about saying no to salads because there are so many different types of salads. It's about knowing what's in it and is it cooked.
Yeah.
So that's one thing where I see a broccoli salad. If the broccoli looks cooked, I'm like, oh, that's fine then. But if it looks like it's raw broccoli chunks, I'm like, yeah, I don't even want to touch that because I don't even like raw broccoli. And it's not easy to chew. If it's not easy to chew, it's not going to be easy to digest, And there's a lot more chewing that you have to do. And do we all chew enough? No. Digestion starts in the mouth, and we should really be chewing everything, a good number of times before we swallow it. So knowing that principle, which is that eat more cooked foods than raw foods, also understanding that it's a seasonal thing. So if you're living in LA or Dubai and you're having a salad, it's probably easier to digest than in the thick winter of London, because your body needs more warming things in winter. Eating raw foods, your digestion slows down a little bit. So in the summer, you can probably process those salads a bit more. But as a general rule, I would say try to avoid too many raw foods.
Yeah, I think that's so interesting what you're saying around like just the summer, winter, also like not eating salads at night, right? Because it's harder to digest. And even when I think about eating raw broccoli or cauliflower or any of that, like my whole body has a
Yeah,
reaction. Like I don't even want that. I think we have to listen to some of that too, where like sometimes you're just eating not even mindfully at all,
yeah,
obviously. But your body's having a reaction to it also, like
yeah,
the idea
absolutely.
of it.
And also, they say massage your kale and all of that. And that's all important as well, because, when you have left a salad in an oil for a while, it soaks it in. It's almost like it is a little bit cooked, right? So the leaves, when you put them, think about salad, the grains in salads, whether it's pearl barley or quinoa or whatever, those things are cooked. So actually you are having a cooked food there. It's just maybe it's not hot. What I sometimes do is if I'm getting a salad, I might go home and toss it in a pan so that it's a bit more warm, unless there's something in it. Most salads can be cooked, so that it's a little bit warming. It's better for the body. So yeah, that's how I would do it.
Yeah. No, I just think that's so interesting. I don't think people are conscious of even how, raw foods are impacting us and how to eat them, and how that impacts our digestion specifically. Um, and my next question is sort of about castor oil, because I think this is something that in the West, like they don't really understand it. That's my sense of it. Meaning, like, even if I go to the grocery store and there's castor oil, it's in the supplement section, and then I see it and it'll say on it like, "Do not use orally," and I'm like, well, I mean, we've drank castor oil. So how does castor oil play a role in improving our digestion?
Castor oil is something that I didn't discover until slightly later in life, and I think it's so important in so many ways, and I use it on a daily basis topically, and I drink it. So it works in many ways. So I would, if if you have digestion problems and you have a slower digestion, then taking half a teaspoon to 1 teaspoon of castor oil in warm water at night is really beneficial. You can add a little pinch of ginger to that as well, ginger powder, because that helps with inflammation. But that's not the part for digestion. The part for digestion is the castor oil. So that will really help. I take that on most days. At night, I also put castor oil in my belly, just a few drops into my belly, and just massage it in. Some people put more, some people put a tape on the top so that it really sinks in. I don't do any of that. I just put some castor oil in my belly and just let it be there and massage it in. And then you can also use it on your skin. So, eyelashes, eyebrows, apparently it really helps the hair, so hair growth. So you can also put it on your hair, but it gets very, very sticky. So if you're using it in hair, you would want to mix it with some other oil because it can be a very sticky oil for the hair. And so it has so many benefits to digestion. And then other than that, they say castor oil packs are very, very good at different times of, like if it's your time of month or you have bloating, or there's other times where you can use castor oil packs. So putting warm castor oil pack on your belly can really help. And I think that covers quite a few things, but I'm sure there are other ways in which you can use castor oil, but it's very beneficial and it can be taken, orally, and your digestion does really benefit. It literally works as a natural laxative for the stomach, and you don't need much of it. It's literally half a teaspoon, or even less. So, but it's about being consistent with these practices. We take fish oil, or we take, whatever oil, omega oils. In the same way, if you take castor oil, it'll just help your system and your digestion. But it also not just helps digestion, it also helps your joints when you take that castor oil. So if, for example, you're living in a cold country and, I don't know, you're getting older, maybe osteoporosis is an issue in the family, whatever it is, having castor oil can actually help those joints as well.
That's so interesting. Yeah, I feel like my digestive issue is that I don't eliminate fully. Like that's been my thing since I was little, and it does, like, the toxins do back up inside of me. And I feel like the castor oil just helps me fully eliminate.
Yes,
and I don't
me
even
too.
What'd you say?
Me too.
Right? Because I think people don't even notice when they've gone half bathroom and not full bathroom.
And also people rely on really in chemical or what is perceived as natural laxatives, but actually they're not good for you to have on a daily basis. Whether it's, senna leaves or things like that, they're quite harsh for the system. And I can totally understand if someone needs it because, if you really get blocked, you get blocked and you need something. However, firstly, you need to change your diet, because actually changing your diet and working with your digestion is so possible, but you just have to understand what your body requires and needs. And secondly, swapping that senna or whatever you're taking or laxative for something as natural as castor oil, it is very effective. It's not just, and you can supplement that castor oil with isabgol, which is the psyllium husk, which is amazing for the body. And you can have that on a daily basis. It's simply adding more fiber. First thing to look at when you have issues with going to the bathroom is, what are you eating on a daily basis? Number 2, are you eating too late? Number 3, are you having enough fiber? Number 4, for me, it's are you having too much wheat? Because too much doughy stuff will just become a ball in your stomach and it'll be very hard to digest. So can you cut that out? And number 5, adding things like psyllium husk in warm water at night and castor oil will just help you completely eliminate.
So what are some of the digestive issues that you've had, and like where are you in that process of healing it?
So that's what I mean by working with your digestive system. I think growing up, I realized early on that I get cramps and digestion issues, and then I was told that I have a mild form of IBS. Now, that doesn't go away. However, if you change the way you eat every single day, that can go away. And I think by changing the way I've eaten, I don't think about it on most days. I don't think, oh, have I been to the loo today? Because I sort of normalized, and my digestive system feels very normal now. However, because I've had that issue and because I have a sluggish sort of system, if I do things like travel and eat slightly wrongly, that can have more of an impact. Not more of an impact than before, but more of an impact than maybe other people. So I would then come off a flight and feel like, I need a good night's sleep and need to make sure that I take some sort of something to make sure that I eliminate in the morning. So, that sort of thing. So if I get disrupted too much, like I've flown, but I've also not drunk enough water, but I've also had a sandwich or something, and that can impact me a bit more, that's all. Because flying does disrupt your digestion, and then on top of that, you're having something awful to eat. So, but usually when I fly, I try and be very careful about what I eat, and I take something with me. Or I eat something cooked and I try not to have too many raw things. So that really helps. And carrying things and being very careful and mindful about what I eat. The thing about how to change the way you eat is you've got to like what you do. So if I'm telling you to have chia seeds and you really don't like them, chances are in 20 days time or in a month's time, you're not going to be having those chia seeds. You might start and you're going to be like, I don't want that now. So find the things that you can have and that you can like. And the other thing is you will start liking something more, So if you say don't love chia seeds and you swap that from flax seeds and they're a little bit better, but you can make them more tasty by adding some oats into it and some yogurt and some, whatever it is, something else into it. And you can start liking it more as a result. And then over time, your taste buds will change and you might crave that a bit more. So it's about just finding the things that work for you. If you don't like tofu and you really need the extra protein and you're vegetarian, maybe roll that tofu into your roti. Or if you don't like beans, but you really feel like you need them because we all need beans in our life, beans and lentils, then maybe you can mash them and make a burger out of it. There's just different ways of working with your system. And I think the minute you start finding things you like and that work for you and start doing that on a daily basis, you can change how your system operates as well. So that's what I mean by saying that I've changed my digestion. It's not that my issues have got that much better. I'm sure they haven't, but I don't even think about them anymore because on a daily basis, I'm naturally eating for my digestion, so much so that it all feels very normal now.
Yeah, I mean, the reason I wanted to bring up this topic in particular is that there's not really like a cure for this. You know what I mean? There's not a cure because it's a lifestyle thing. And I think so many people struggle with IBS symptoms, bloating.
Well, the cure is changing your lifestyle to suit your digestion. And that's what I mean when I say putting myself first. So if I'm going to an event, I will try not to eat there. I mean, depends, obviously I'll eat something, but I'll try not to overdo the eating and try and eat before I go. Because I know that it'll affect my digestion so much more by eating something like a naan or a bread at night or eating even too late. So I'll try not to do that. I don't want to disrupt my system. I mean, the one-off is fine, but if you're doing these things on a regular basis, you're going to get disturbed on a regular basis, and that's going to become your 80%, not your 20%.
Yeah. I know I get so much slack because I don't eat late, and if I eat late, I eat very little, because of my own digestion, and I'm 47, and if I eat late, I gain weight pretty quickly, and so. But like a lot of people would be like, "Why aren't you eating? You should eat. You got to eat." Blah blah blah. And I'm just like a hard no. I'm just like no because I'm gonna feel like shit tomorrow, and I'm not going to do that to myself, right?
Well done, you. That's so good. So good to stick to your guns. It's hard, I know, because
it's hard. It's totally hard. I mean, there's so many things I want to eat. It's not like I'm like a superwoman here that just doesn't, that has so much discipline. It's hard, but I think for me, it's like I know the consequence of it, and the consequence does not. It's so big to me, or I've made it so much bigger than the pleasure in the moment that I can stick to my guns. You know what I mean?
And that's why you look so young. I would put it down to that.
Yes. maybe. Yeah. Yeah. But I think
Because it's
like
the repercussions as well. Think about, it's not
it
just
is.
about what I'm going to eat right now. It's about how I'll feel tomorrow. It's about, I might wake up tomorrow and because I've eaten like this, I might feel like super stressed out because I need to go to the gym and I don't even have time to fit it in, or I don't really want to go, but I'm going to have to go now. It's not, going to the gym is fine, but say, for example, you hadn't factored that into your day, but you've eaten so badly that you're like stressed out about it in your mind now. So it's caused a stress in your mind, which is actually the opposite of what you should be trying to do. Ideally, if you're going to eat badly, or let's not call it bad, if you're going to eat and let yourself go and eat something delicious and that's fine, then just let yourself go and do it. But try not to make a habit of it, that's all. And then don't feel sad and annoyed at yourself about it. Don't feel guilty. That's probably the worst thing you could do. And that's me speaking from experience because I've lived with a lot of guilt in my life. And I think that's what we need to take out of the equation because that causes more issues and stress than we realize.
Yeah, it's so true. It's such a hard thing to do, right? Like, because sometimes we just go for it mindlessly, and then yeah, we do this beat up thing. But the I think what you just said is really beautiful. There's like a ripple effect, right? There's like a ripple effect that you're not even conscious of in that moment by eating that thing. And so sometimes you're going to just go for it and do it, and deal with the ripple effect. But sometimes just acknowledging the ripple effect that it has can help you sort of curb the impulse, I'll call it. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's about taking away those distractions as much as you can. It's harder when I would say it's harder when you're mum, friends of mine who have kids. It's much harder because you end up, biting at those leftovers. You feel like you can nibble at, and you have two different eating times then. So how do you stay disciplined? It's hard. And it's not at the forefront of your mind because there are other battles to fight. There's more things going on in your life than, oh my God, what am I going to eat today? I totally get that. And you can't just focus and fixate on that. But that's when sort of doing that on a daily basis and being stressed on a daily basis can take its toll over time. And you'll never be able to trace it back to one thing anyway. You'll never be like, oh, that's because I started doing X, Y, Z. But it could be a culmination of so many things. So to try and prevent these things in the future or curb those signs when you find them and see them and just stop it there and then rather than let it get worse is so pays off so much.
Yeah, it does over time. And like you said, like, it's not like you're like living with it, but you also are not thinking about it anymore, and so there's a way that some of it is healed, and then there's ways that it can get aggravated again. But like, there's also ways that you don't think about it days and days and days in, right?
Yeah, and how can you turn a vicious cycle into a virtuous cycle?
Yeah. That's nice. That's nice. Yeah, I feel like there's this Jain concept called unodari. And unodari means like always eating less than a full tummy. So, always eating just like when you get out of eating a meal, right? That you feel like you have some hunger,
Yeah,
that you're eating half of
so
what you would
important.
eat.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so unadari is like very powerful for the digestion, for your body. So I try to do that too. It's not easy. It's actually very hard. It's like a sort of a form of fasting almost, because your palate is now getting the food, and now you're having
Ah.
to stop it consciously so that you're still a little hungry, so it's a very like mindful practice. But
Yeah, you have to force yourself to do these things. It's hard. But then once you start doing them, and initially they feel forced, then you see the results, and then they become a part of your sort of natural state of being, a natural way. As hard
yeah,
as it is, it's still hard, if there are
yeah.
desserts in front of you and if you're somewhere, and it's hard because it's all there. And we are living in a world where we're surrounded by snacks and food.
Yeah.
And it's all very readily available.
What would you say is the number one complaint that you do get around, like, just eating well, nourishing yourself? Like, what's the number one complaint?
Number one complaint would be I'm feeling so much more bloated the older I get, and I have no idea why. And I think that is just an indication of the number of people that are getting digestion issues, because that bloating could be related to so many different things. It could be caused by so many different things. You cannot pin it down to one thing. And that could be a sign of things getting even worse. You know, if you continue that bloating, if you continue to let that bloating just be there and not deal with it because you wouldn't know how to, you know, that could get worse and become something. So before it becomes something, that becomes very hard to tackle and deal with. Can you nip it in the bud when it is just some bloating recurring? So, you know, what is it that's causing it? Then look into it, whether it's with a practitioner or just understanding that actually I'm stressed. I need to figure out what that's causing that stress, and can I eliminate that stress some way, or can I sleep better, or can I start eating in a different way, and what is it that I'm doing wrong with my food? The problem is that most people, and there's a lot of people out there that don't know how to deal with these things or what they're doing wrong. They actually don't know. That awareness isn't there. And I think having the awareness of what your food is and what food types you have and what is it that's on your plate in terms of macronutrients, in terms of, and not just thinking, oh, the world is talking about protein, let's just go on a protein. It's not about that. It's about understanding, what are you having? What is this? And what is fiber? Why is fiber really important? I'm having a balance of all three things. It's not just about, let me work off what I've eaten, because back in the day, that was what it was for me. Let me work off what I've eaten. Let me go to the gym and feel like I've actually worked off something. But it's not about that. So it's about it's a whole holistic change. And I think the number one complaint being bloating and feeling rough in the stomach is related to so many different things, and you've got to get to that root cause, whatever that might be. And it could be through trial and error, okay. But look at not just, oh God, I had beans and I feel bloated, or I ate too late and I feel bloated. Look at your sleep and your patterns and your stress. Don't forget to look at that stress and the impact of that stress. Or are you doing 100 HIIT workouts when you're actually very busy? Should you be doing yoga instead? Think of yoga as well as an internal body massage. When you move in some of these asanas or yoga poses, you're actually twisting in such a way that you're massaging your digestive system, and your spine is being twisted. And so you're opening up things that you, in a normal workout, you're not going to be able to move and open up. So doing these spinal twists, even if it's just incorporating some yoga poses into your daily life, you're really helping your digestive system. And by doing yoga, you'll end up breathing better as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'm like a yoga person. Like, I can't, everybody's always like, why don't you go to the gym? I'm like, I don't do the gym. I do yoga, but it's true. Like my belly in general, when I do the twists, like I feel it right away. You feel
You like it, like, literally going like this. It's like when you squeeze the sponge, it feels like that. You're literally squeezing your internal system, and you feel like a little bit of a click inside. You may even hear a click, and it just feels like a release. Because we're holding so much in our body. We're holding tension, we're holding emotions, we're holding pain. And by consistently practicing yoga, you're actually allowing those emotions and pain and stress and tension to release.
Yeah, totally. Like you literally feel like the stress is getting wrung out of you. Like you just
And the other complaint I would say from people is that people don't know where to start. Like, Mira, where do I start? I want to start doing better things for myself, but what do I even do? And I think people feel overwhelmed by what they see on social media. People feel overwhelmed by following so many people in the health and wellness field and by seeing what they're doing. And people don't know where to start. And I think what I say to those, whenever someone asks me that, I always say, take one thing, take changing your timing, for example, or take one thing in food, take one thing in the mind, like whether that's like journaling or like waking up 5 minutes early and listening to something inspiring or whatever it is. Take one thing and make that change, even if it's a 5-minute thing, even if it's a 2-minute thing. Like, you want to incorporate yoga, but don't overwhelm yourself. Don't say, I'm going to do 3 classes a week. Say to yourself, okay, I'm going to try and make that one class, but I'm going to try and just do 7 minutes or 5 minutes in the morning on a Tuesday, and And that will then result in you doing more, because actually you doing 5 minutes of yoga poses every day will actually be so much more beneficial than trying to incorporate that one class that you try and get to and it takes so long to get to, because that class will come anyway. Once you start those 5 minutes in the morning and you start incorporating them, you'll realize how good you feel, and then that class will come. So just let it increase naturally. Don't force yourself to do something too much too quick.
Yeah, and it compounds, right? I think like the difference of what you're even sharing right now is if you just take one thing and like work at it, it starts to be, it gets built into your habits. And instead of like, okay, I'm going to join 2 classes a week, and then if I don't, and if I fall sick and then I miss the 2 classes, and then this thing happens and I miss the classes, it's like you're
Yeah.
relying on the classes versus a habit that you're incorporating into
Yeah,
your
I mean,
lifestyle. Yeah.
yeah, whether it's like, it could even, forget yoga, if it's something else, it could be just, I don't have time for yoga, so let me wake up and just tap my body and wake my body up. And then just sit down for 2 minutes and do like deep breathing. That could be your practice. And that in itself can make a huge amount of change in your body, because you're waking up by, tapping your body all over. I use a tapper, but you can use this and do all that, and you're waking your body up, and then you sit down and you do deep breathing, and then you can do a couple of stretches, and literally those 5 minutes can be transformational if you do them every day. So it's about being consistent with those practices, whether it's like oiling your face, and then soon you'll be like, oh, I love this, let me do oiling the body. So it's about it's about creating that virtuous cycle, but starting really, really small.
That's great. Okay, I want to end on, what do you do in your morning routine?
What do I do in my morning routine? Well, it does, since I'm traveling all the time, it does change a little bit. But when I wake up, what do I do in my morning routine? I do take a few deep breaths. I don't normally sit up and meditate. I do want to do that, and I want to change that. So that's a change I want to make. I want to do, even if it's 2 minutes meditation, I want to do that. I obviously get up, and the bathroom's the first thing. But I do oil pulling. So I do take a little bit of sesame oil, and after I brush my teeth usually, or you can do it even before, take a little bit of sesame oil, swish it around for a few minutes, and spit that out. And you can do it with coconut oil or whichever oil you want. And that is for my teeth. It's for getting rid of toxins that are built up during the night. It's for so many things. And so that's something that I've incorporated into my morning routine. And on many days, I will try to do a headstand, because it's so good for the body. And I'll oil my face, but that's become a part of my daily morning and night routine. Gua sha, I'd love to say I include every day. I don't do it every day, but I do like the feeling of it. So it's something that I do now and again. Once I put my oil on, I'll do it. But regardless, I'll try and do just massage my face nicely, and that will feel really good. And that's it, I think. And then I do try and do a short prayer, usually. So whether that's reading 2 verses of the Bhagavad Gita, which I try and do every morning, and a mala, usually. So it's a short prayer that I do in my small temple in my room. And even when I'm abroad, I generally carry my Gita with me. So try and read a few verses in the morning. But when I say try, and when I say every morning, it's not every morning. There are some times when I do it at night, because it doesn't always happen in the morning.
Yeah.
But it's such a great way to start the day. The minute you change your morning routine, it does change how your day goes.
Yeah. And I guess I wanted everybody listening even to get, it can be simple. Like it can be very simple. It's not like this elaborate morning routine that I think so many people concoct, because I feel like that can't really last more than, I don't know, several days, at least for me. I'm so bad at the routine of something, you know what I mean? But
and I think the one thing that I try and do now more than I did before is just give myself a few minutes before I look at my phone, because sometimes thoughts that were lingering at night, or a dream that I had that I would normally forget, come to mind in those few minutes before you let the world come in. And it's quite amazing to see that and feel that, because it makes you wake up in a whole different way.
Yeah, it does. I'm the worst at that.
Yeah.
I'm always like,
I'm not saying I do it all the time, but it does make a difference the days I do it. I know exactly what you're saying. It doesn't happen every day. I'm not saying I've changed everything and I do everything the perfect way. I really don't.
No, I know,
and I look at my phone probably too much, and I want to change that. So those are things I want to change. You know, after doing this podcast, I'm like, I want to write these 3 things I want to change. But they are things I want to change. But it's about making a conscious effort to make those changes.
yeah. And I think take one thing. I mean, I think if anybody listening has digestive issues, if you just take 2 breaths before eating anything, my God, that could make such a big difference. So
that could stop you from eating something. I could be like, wait a second, I'm thinking about it now. Maybe I shouldn't be having that biscuit.
Especially after my podcast, or if I have like a intense work thing that I'm doing, I like go straight to the kitchen and I just
yeah, totally.
Well, I mean, this was such a pleasure. Thank you so much, Mira, for being on. And I bought her book, The Book of Chai. I have it right here.
Thank you.
And I want to buy your saffron. So, what is it?
Saffron soul and Prajna Ayurvedic rituals for happiness.
Well, I'm excited about the saffron soul because you have Gujarati dishes in there, and I just always am looking for like some inspiration in that realm. So
lots of Gujarati dishes in there. Yeah, and it's very basic stuff, which is really nice, because I think focusing on home cooked basic foods is what your staples will become, and that's what I like about that book.
I know, but you know, whenever I say like home cooked anything to ever like somebody, like I feel like I see stress on their face. You know what I mean? Like they're like home cooked, like I've got to do work with, you know what I mean? Like, but
yeah, and such a big literally difference. It could be. You've got to look at your whole life and everything that you do every day, and think, oh, what's that one change I can make? And then that next thing will come, and then the next thing will come. And it's just literally taking it step by step, rather than thinking, every time I think about it, I'm just too overwhelmed. I'm not even sure where to start. Like, it's not about where to start. It's about picking that one thing that calls to you.
Okay, so what is your one thing? And I'll say my one thing, and we'll end on that.
Okay, my one thing is, I've spoken a lot. I think you should start with your one thing.
Okay. So my one thing is putting castor oil. Like, I want to do it for my son every night in his belly button, and I need to do it too. So along with drinking it, I will do that as well. That'll be my one thing.
Okay, my one thing is deep breathing in the morning every day, rather than just some days. So first thing in the morning, deep breathing and not looking at my phone. And using that moment to meditate. even if it's meditating horizontally.
Yeah, I do that sometimes too. I'm like, yeah, I'm meditating. It's so different when you're not doing it horizontally. Oh, this is such a pleasure and a joy. Thank you so much for being on and sharing your wisdom. And I just appreciate it.
Yeah, me too. Thank you for having me, Kavita. Really nice chatting to you.
Yeah. I hope you loved this episode of Desi Wisdom. Please leave a comment below telling me if you liked it, if you didn't like it, what you would have wanted more of. It really helps me refine this podcast to give you exactly what you want. I will be reading every comment and responding. Also, I know this is the last thing that you're going to want to be doing, but if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. When you hit that subscribe button, you'll be notified of the episodes that come out every single Tuesday. So hit that subscribe button. And if you're ready to binge another episode of Desi Wisdom, take a look at this one. It's a good one.